All right, welcome back to another episode of the Daily Burner. If you guys haven't caught, or this is your first time being on the channel, like I just said, this is the Daily Burner. We talk about all things fire department, sometimes the EMS, maybe the police department. It's kind of a sore subject, but anyways, I'm your host, Hunter Holt, and we got some good discussions, good topics for tonight, and hope you guys enjoy the show. And just remember, if you guys like this content, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Spotify. So, and I'll let these guys introduce themselves again. So, and then after that, we'll get started.
I'm Gabriel Rathbone. I've been on just about every episode. I think I've missed one. So y'all should know me, and y'all see me again soon. So
I'm Dalton Stanley. I'm on A shift, 19, about to go on 20. Been in the fire service for 3 years now, and I love it. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
I'm Brian Kessler. Fire service 5, 6 years. So fresh lieutenant. Love working with these guys here. Hope to keep doing it till I retire.
Yeah, he's also been on one episode before
One
this,
episode.
and it was a really good episode. Actually, I think it's been our most popular episode, to be completely honest with you.
Good.
And stuff. So today's topic is standards. And we're gonna start from bottom low level firefighter to um your most senior officer and stuff. Now a lot of this is just personal opinion. Um and then yeah, we're just go ahead and jump into it. I'm gonna go ahead and ask Dalton. Since Dalton is the newest guy here, how would you say that when you came and done your new hire process?
New,
And you being here, because you've been here for almost a year, right?
no, I've been here a year and a half now.
Okay, a year and a half. Okay. So how would you say that because when you went done your interview, they talked about the standards of what you yeah, I gotta restart. I can't believe that.
Well, the standards of what's expected.
Yeah, the standard of what expected you. How would you say that we've upheld that?
The standards for a new hire, it varies on your department. Smaller departments got less standards, bigger departments got bigger standards. It's your first new hire date. You come in, you do your test, you get hired. Standards for a new hire, fresh out of rookie school, know your trucks. Go in there, learn your trucks, learn everything about them. Pay attention. Pay attention to the older guys. They've been doing it longer than you have, so definitely watch them, learn off of them, and find out, how does this department fight fire differently from this department here or there? Find out how your department fights fire and watch the older guys because they'll teach you that. Listen, be respectful, and just carry on. Make friends. It's a brotherhood. These aren't your work buddies. These aren't like people that you come to work, every 3 days, and you see this one guy, and it's the last time you see him. Most of these guys have been to my house. We've hung out the most out of it. Be friends with them. If you have a job you like, you'll never work, a single day in your life.
Now I want to ask the standards that Chief put out, because you got a paper. I mean, everybody that works here has had a paper handed to them that lays out the standards of what's expected of you working here. How well has our department maintained those standards for you?
So the department upheld them. That whenever it's written on paper, what chief wants us upheld, that goes to you. That department's set up for it. Do this, do that, do it this way, do it this way, do it that way. That's up to you to upheld those.
How do you think? But well, I think what he's trying to get at is how do you think our department has upheld those standards? How, as a department, do you think we've upheld those? Because we're pretty lax in a lot of things.
We are.
Um,
As our department upholding those, I would say we're a little above average. I wouldn't say we're perfect by no means. We're not the best by no means, but we are right there at the above average a little bit.
do you think do you think it's hard, the standards that you have to uphold?
Some of them, absolutely. Some of them don't make sense completely.
Mm.
Some of them makes perfect sense, but that's just how it falls out.
Where you at that?
Exactly.
Okay, so as an officer, you have to uphold those standards. Yeah, whatever the chief says that you have to do, you have to enforce the rules and stuff.
Yeah,
And how difficult? Actually, I'll ask this: how difficult is it for you to uphold not even just the standards, but like your personal standards that you have for your shift? How hard is that?
I want to add on to that too before you answer the question. As an officer here, how well do you think the officers at this department uphold the standard to the firefighters?
Man, kind of a lot to answer. How the other officers uphold the standards? Well, it varies by shift. We've all noticed certain shifts are a little more, let's say, and some shifts are a little more lax. That's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, we mostly get everything that needs to get done done. Now, as an officer enforcing these standards, 80% of the time, it's relatively easy. But 20% of the time, you get some people who are in a bad mood. One day, don't want to listen, don't want to work, want to be, let's say, ride the recliners. Yeah. But majority of the time, it's been pretty easy to enforce the standards.
So you made what, lieutenant, a couple months ago?
Last year,
It was
Last year?
middle of last
So
year.
you're newer to it?
Yeah.
How did it change from your standards as a firefighter to go into? Was that easy to learn? Easy to catch on to?
I wouldn't say it was easy, but I feel like I've caught on to it pretty quickly. Still struggle because I love being a fireman and being an officer. That means I'm responsible for you guys and I'm responsible to make sure everything gets done. And when something's not done, it goes to my captain, comes to me, then it goes to y'all.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So me as a firefighter, right? I want to make the shift look as good as possible, right? Or does the department look as good as possible? So how hard do you think it is for a new guy coming in to want to do good? How do I get this? How do you inspire him to want to do good? Maintain the standard that's already set for you from chief, trickling that down and trying to have that same type of motivation for your firefighters. How hard is that on a day-to-day basis?
I'd say it depends on the day, really. Like some days I come on shift, I'm motivated, I'm ready to work, and if you come in motivated, that inspires your coworkers to be motivated with you. And whenever I come in and I'm not feeling my best, it's just like it trickles down to everybody. So really having a good attitude makes all the difference when you come on shift.
Yeah.
But
Now,
you-
have you ever been in the position where you've had to threaten to write up somebody or write up somebody as far as being an officer because they're not really upholding the standard, but just not doing what needs to be done?
I've never had to actually threaten to write somebody up. Like usually if it comes down to it, like let's say somebody doesn't listen to me first 2, 3 times, we go to some place like an office, talk, and that usually gets it settled before it comes to actually writing anybody up.
Okay. New firefighter. What's your mindset when it comes to coming in on shift?
Coming on shift?
And like I said, then there's an expectancy for you, especially like when you first get started. Like, hey, you need to learn it. Like what you said, learn all the trucks, learn all whatever the compartment has and stuff like that. But how hard was it for you when you first come started? Because Dalton comes from a background of welding, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a relative. I'm not going to say it's relatively easy. You still have to go to school for that, but you know what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And when you come in here, you don't really know what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Everything is kind of yeah, there's like a calendar that we go by as far as what chores we're doing, what work we're doing, what training we're doing and stuff. But that's where you don't ever know what calls you're going to run, right? Or you don't ever know what chief's going to ask you to do. So how hard was it from you going from what little standards you had working your 40-hour week welding to coming to here?
I remember my first shift, and it was so my father was in the fire service for a while. I knew the basics. That's all I knew coming into it. Learn everything you can that first shift. Just taking knowledge your first couple weeks here. Coming in from welding, I knew what I was going to be welding every day. I welded the same part every day. I knew what part I was going to weld, how to weld it. Coming here, my first shift was a just wrecking ball. It was 3 structure fires in one night. I didn't know what to do. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Okay, he was there. Well, I was actually on a truck with him. I didn't know what to do. I was freaking out. We had a medical call. It's a total different ball game here. I know that on my shift, I'm going to come in every night. We do it by months, so I'll be cleaning this kitchen for a month. Then we'll switch. Then we'll switch again. But during that time, that from that 7 a.m. to the 7 a.m. the next day, I don't know what's going to happen. It will throw you the biggest curveball of your life and then speed you right back up.
Yeah.
It's total different ball game than any other job out there.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
And plus everything that's been put on you, because when you first got hired here, one of the first tasks that you had to tackle was going to the academy.
But yeah,
So tell me give me the standards that you had to go through there as well too.
academy.
Yeah,
You had to upheld some tight standards at the academy.
okay.
Well shaven every day. Showed up, not looking sloppy, get there on time, stuff like that. That was a challenge because I worked shift before I went to the academy. So I went from a 24/48 to 5 days a week, not knowing what time I'm gonna get off because, sometimes we got off at 7, sometimes we got off at 4 and 3 and even 6. It was just all different. You definitely gotta get in a different mindset just, at a snap of a finger. Then once you get out of the, academy, you gotta go right back into that 24/48 mindset. Really weird.
And it's pretty hard to adjust to because, where you're freshly married and
Yeah,
all that.
it was definitely a learning process. We're in a flow now. We know how it's gonna go. Basically, it gets easier for new firemen. If I had to say anything, it gets easier as you go. It gets to a point where you just get into this flow state, and hey, I know this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen. My wife's gonna be taken care of at the house. Then I can go on to work. All that stuff. So it's definitely a weird process at first, but you definitely get used to it after a
Do
while.
you think it made you a better firefighter?
What's that?
Just going through that whole process and having to uphold the standards from your academy. Do you think it made you a better firefighter, gave you a better mindset of it?
From the academy, it taught me a lot. It definitely 100% made me a better firefighter.
Mm.
I'd learned stuff through the academy I never even thought about, never even knew existed. That was really neat. The academy we went through, really nice. We learned a lot out of it, and you will learn a lot out of it.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the time, and it's just this is a nationwide issue. Departments have a hard time holding a standard just because there's such a shortage of people and stuff. So we can kind of go into the next part of the discussion. How well do departments around the nation hold standards for new hires, and are there enough? I'll ask you, Kezzy, since you're an officer and stuff. Does departments uphold their standards pretty well, or do you think there's an issue, holding to that just because there's so many people that don't want to do the job?
I think the departments in our local area tend to hold their standards sometimes higher than ours.
With most of the volunteer departments, like
Yeah,
that.
some
Yeah.
volunteer departments, some paid departments. Now the county over, they have training. They have a whole new training for their new hires. 7 a.m. PT first
Mhm.
thing in the morning.
Pretty rough, yeah.
It's rough, but that's a good standard to have, I
Yeah,
think.
shout out to you boys. You know exactly who I'm talking about. So yeah, but no, yeah, I agree. I think in just this region, we do a good job and stuff like that. But you do, as you look and work in other areas, the standards kind of get lower. Stuff like
Depends on
that.
where you go.
It really does, and depends on what volunteer department you're associating with as well too. Because the area that me and Dalton volunteer at, the standards um are just not there. Okay, they are not. So, and it's also getting to a position of the lack of tactics, training, education really starting to show. Like you could go to we'll just use like a structure fire, right? Joe Blow, who has a 16-hour course, can't go in and do the work that needs to be done, put the fire out, gets on scene on his POV, assumes command, and then tries to tell everybody else to do, hey, can't go in, it's too dangerous, whatever. And then people lose their house over a room what could have been just a room of contents fire. Right.
Yeah, lack of tactics does tend to lose more homes than it saves.
Lack of tactics and
And like I said,
You
it's the
might-
lack of, I think, I think we're trying to
Education.
get a lack of education and the standard that, because like I said, especially the area that we're at, the lack of standard training, whatever you want to call it, is terrible.
I've been in some houses here that in our volunteer community we probably wouldn't go in.
No.
Because lack of tactics, they don't like I said earlier in this video was the way we fight fire. Almost every department, if you watch, is totally different at fighting fire. We will fight it totally different than the next, neighboring county over there. We might have a couple guys, might have a lot of guys. Neighboring county might have 20 guys, might have 4 guys. So it's just how you fight fire.
It kind of goes back to our last episode. We talked about reckless. What is it? Being reckless versus aggressive, not reckless.
Yeah.
But the difference between that is how you train.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we do a lot of mutual aid.
Yep.
And, there's a high possibility of us doing mutual aid with your department.
Yep.
But if we get a structure fire with any of the departments, like we said the last episode, what we do might seem reckless to somebody else, but we've trained on it. And what you see as reckless and aggressive depends on how you train.
Yeah.
And your training for your the minimum requirement for training goes back to your department standards on it, on how they maintain the standards, on your physical appearance, on your physical fitness,
Mm-hmm.
your, I don't know exactly how to word it, but
I'll say education.
mental stuff of it too.
Yeah.
I'd say effectiveness. If this county over here is fighting this fire the same way we are, and it takes them, let's say it takes us 30 minutes longer,
Mhm.
we got to switch something up because they're getting it done a whole lot quicker and upholding a higher standard than we are holding. So if they're going into this house 50% involved, we got the same setup. They save 50% of this house, and ours is fully involved in the next couple minutes.
Yeah.
They're doing something different, and we're going to have to train harder, more efficiently, and try to figure out what we're doing wrong there.
And I think that, again, ego is a big thing,
Yes.
especially between department heads, but cross department training. If we go out to a structure fire with our volunteers and I'm watching them and I see them do something and it works, it's effective, and, they're proficient at it, I want to know how they do it. I'll go up and question them, like, what's that called? How'd you do it? Can you come out, one day, show us how it's done? That relationship between departments, I think together you'll be able to hold a higher standard with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And your hold and everybody else will hold each other accountable, right?
Mhm.
And it just provides a better service. But going back to let's go back to the volunteer department. I think that we need to raise the standards and minimum requirements on education, training, and I would even say staffing at this point, right? So here in the state of Tennessee, in order for you to become a firefighter, you just have to have a 16-hour course, right? In order to go interior on a house fire, you're only required to have a 64-hour minimum training with a live burn 1 and 2 certification. I think we need to raise the standard for that on the minimum qualification of what to be on a volunteer to, like, firefighter 1, firefighter 2 standard. Because with that high level of training, you can be more effective on the fire ground. The citizens will benefit more about it. And there should be like minimum staffing with your volunteer department, like whether it's like, part time, or you get like something added onto your retirement or something like that. But I think there needs to be something better in place just for the community, because the community suffers for lack of education, lack of trying, just not knowing just not knowing how to do anything.
Your 64, it would work sometimes your 64 would work in a Royal Fire Department that catches that barn fire, you know, every year.
Yeah.
At every year barn fire, don't get a lot of fires, a few brush fires, but you get into like our volunteers around us, 64 ain't enough.
No, it isn't. No, and
Mm-mm.
like
It's gonna get
you're not
hard.
like I said, you're not seeing enough either, because we fight a whole lot less fire than, like, the services between, like, before us or whatever, and so you benefit more from going for more classes, going to more trainings and stuff. But there also need to be kind of incentives put in place for the volunteers, I
Mhm.
think, too, because I mean we are doing it
I
for
get
free, and
yeah.
we love doing it. Like I said, I love being a part of that community. I love serving the community and stuff like that. But it's hard to pick, hey, we have a class here, but my rent or my bills are due, so I have to pick up an extra I have to go to work, you know what I'm saying?
Training also goes back on safety for
Yeah.
volunteer departments, for career departments, whether you've got a rural department that only catches, 2 or 3 structure fires a year, departments in our area where you might have 100 or more. We need one to hold each other accountable for
Yep.
training, because you go to a structure fire, all right? Everybody here, we know we've had the same training. Everybody trusts to go inside a burning building with each other. If you go to a volunteer department, they don't have that many training standards set in place, or they only require a 16-hour class and live burn. If they don't train and that's all they had, I don't trust going inside with them.
Yeah, I
I
don't
mean, my
either.
personal, and that's another thing too, is like, if you see that young fresh volunteer and it's like, I want to go inside. Let me go in. You don't want to be mean. You don't want to be rude to them,
Yeah.
but I'm not going inside with you until you have more training.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like and just the the certification in the back, what you
Yeah,
have to say and stuff like
'cause
that. And that goes as far as too, but you could have career people that don't have the amount of training that you do. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about that too. Okay, like yes, certification is not everything, but it does show the amount of like to me,
Effort.
like, yeah, it shows effort. It shows how much you care, right? So
you've also got the people too, going back to training. Getting a bunch of certifications does not mean that you're
yeah,
qualified.
you could have a bunch of certifications and no, I guess something. What would you call it? Street smarts or
Common sense.
common sense. Yeah, that goes a long way. Stuff like that too.
There's a guy that used to work here. He always said, certified does not mean qualified. And I diehard believe that.
Yeah.
Because somebody at a volunteer department who never shows up for the calls but attends the trainings,
Mm-hmm.
they will have a long list of certifications that says that they can do all this.
Yeah.
But when it comes to being on scene, can they?
I believe that same guy that you're talking about, actually bouncing back, said a 64-hour course is just enough to get you hurt.
It is
Yeah.
because it gives you kind of a taste of what it's like
Mhm.
to be a part of the service and running these emergency calls and stuff. And I think it is just hard going from the volunteer service side of things to motivate people to train and stuff to motivate because a lot of people join the fire department for a T-shirt and for recognition, maybe a compliment.
Get the discount at Hardee's.
Yeah, discount Hardee's.
Give me my bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, please.
Yeah, one of those. But it's hard to motivate people, right? And it's also then you've got people that have been inside of the department for years and years and years. Maybe you have a committee that doesn't want to do anything. So I think it would be harder to maintain a higher standard than what we do. But I think that it is something that needs to happen, right? I think that's where we're getting into another issue with recruiting people, right? Because there's some people, like there's a kid I know, super gun ho for the fire service, wants to take all these classes. Some of the administration doesn't want to send her those classes, right? Because hey, we've been doing, we've had, these certifications for 50 years or so. This is what's got us by. We're just going to keep it at that.
I will say, to add on to that, the classes and everything goes off of an instructor. An instructor makes a huge difference because you might show up to a class and this instructor has a book. He's got the book up on the desk. He's reading everything from this book. Everything's about this book. Then you might have an instructor come in and say, you know what? We're going to read from this book, shut this book, and then go do it how it's actually supposed to be done. Because the book is nice and it tells you everything, but actually doing it is what's gonna get your actual knowledge.
While having a good officer or a good senior firefighter.
That too. Even that, bouncing back to the rookie school I took. We went by the book. Then we went outside. The book says you gotta search this way. You gotta do this way. And they said this is how it's actually gonna be done. You're gonna go and show up to your first structure fire, and this is what it's actually gonna be like. It ain't gonna be all by the book here. It's gonna be a little bit here, a little bit there, a little weirder than the book.
Yeah, and you got to learn to adapt too, because you pull up to a structure fire and you get off the truck, and if you do everything by the book, you're gonna pull up and you're gonna try how the book says it, and it's not gonna work, and then you're gonna be like, oh shit, what do I do now?
And you also have to know when to take a higher risk than what a lower risk would be and stuff like that. When do you take how say here?
When do you know to take the risk?
Yeah, when do you know to take the risk, right?
What's the reward?
Exactly.
Yeah, risk a lot to save a lot.
But how would people know that if he didn't have to train to do so?
Exactly.
Right. And a lot of the time, okay, so if you're a really busy department, you get that on scene training. You get those call trainings. But if you're not a very busy department, you're not getting that type of training. So that's where the classes come from. Right.
That's another thing too, between big and small departments. If you have a big department and they have this grand ranking structure of, probationary, firefighter, senior firefighter, your officers and whatever their rank structure on the officers, then the officer can come in and say, hey, this is your senior firefighter. You're going to stick with him on every call for the next 6 months and watch how he does it.
Yeah.
Versus your smaller departments, that you've got 5 guys on the shift.
Yep.
and you're like, you might be on him or with this guy one day and this guy the next.
I will
And
say, to add on to exactly what you're saying, I've been in with Hunter and Kessler, a fair decent amount. I ain't been in that much, but I've worked with him for a year and a half. He will, he will sit at the truck. He'll pump a truck for us. He's great at it. And then the time he goes in, now I don't know how he fights fire. So now I'm trying to follow him around, not knowing how he fights fire. Or versus, how I know you two fight fire. Or our lieutenant on A shift, his name's Gilbert. I know exactly how he fights fire. I've been in with him multiple times. I know every move he's gonna make, where to go, how he wants it done. Versus like, say we had Dixon working, C shift captain. He's been on an episode before. I wouldn't have no clue how he would fight a fire. I've never worked one with him. Wouldn't have his first clue how he fights a fire.
Yeah. All right. So here's a good question. What's too high? If that makes any sense. So let's say you work at a different department and stuff like that. Or actually not here. What would be like where you're trying to maintain too high of a standard?
So your standards vary by department.
Yes.
And honestly, in my opinion, what's too high versus what's too low needs to be measured by the effectiveness on what gets the job done versus what, because there's what you think is the standard and what should be the standard versus what, your men can actually accomplish. Because, big city, New York, they have high standards.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have very high standards compared to us or, compared to the volunteers. So in my opinion, what's too high, that needs to be evaluated by the officers. If the captain comes in and he's looking and he's like, my guys are really trying and they just can't do it. Maybe he needs to have a talk with chief, the other officers, and say, listen, I don't know if y'all are having any issues.
Yeah.
But my guys are, and if nobody else is having the issues, maybe it's just the way we're trying to train on those standards.
Or it's a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Topic.
And, or, same scenario, that captain comes in and he's like, my guys are, they're meeting the standards, but it's not efficient. We need to raise those.
Yeah.
That's something, in my opinion, that it goes by leadership on what your department can handle, what your men can handle, and, even just by department, what goes by shift, because your captain might have a different standard than my captain will.
Yeah. So you say just shift by shift.
Yeah.
And
Casey over here might have a different opinion.
yeah, it depends on that. Yeah.
Little West Virginia boy over there.
Yeah, usually West Virginia out of this.
Sneed Vegas.
I agree with what Gabriel said. Standards can only be so effective.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And like I said, and a lot of this is personal opinion. A lot of this is what we've experienced, and we can't speak on other departments. And like I said, we're not even trying to even hurt feelings or anything like that. But we're just kind of speaking of like here in this area or just the areas that we've got to be involved with and stuff. What would you say? I'll go say this right now. I did say the minimum requirements for a volunteer need to be upped, right? But I think there shouldn't be too high of standards for volunteer departments as far as responses, how much time that you have to be there, and all that, just because you're not getting paid for it. And trying to force your guys to, hey, you have to be here on your off time, or say that you can't spend time with your family because you have calls to run or you have a station to clean. I think that's kind of ridiculous. That's a ridiculous ask. If they're not gaining anything from being at that department or being at the station, then why are we taking away family time, right? You have anything to add on that?
Yeah. I'd like to ask y'all if we were to raise it, like let's say the mandatory standards for volunteer fire departments were raised to like fire one, fire two. How do you think that would negatively affect them?
Oh, it would. I think you'd see a drastic change in the people that you're getting, right? So, but with that, you'd have to add some type of incentive.
Yeah.
You'd have to think about the quality of service that you're going to get after that, right? Better trained firefighters, 100%. Better trained firefighters provides a better service. Calls are getting answered. You have people that know what they're doing. You have people that are willing to do it as well too. So there need to be some type of incentive that goes there. Now, what incentive that might be, that would be up to like a county commission or your city council.
It'd have to be more than the in-service check they get.
But you would see a
drastic.
drastic change. You probably see a lot less people
Yeah,
join the volunteer service. But like I said, but you need to have a set standard for all people, right? So it is a volunteer department, right? So I think the standard should go to that higher standard, the higher minimum qualifications to be the volunteer needs to be for the people that were responding to the emergency calls, in my opinion. Like, you could still, and it's like we've said in previous episodes, you can still join and be a part of the fire department. But if you're not qualified to run the emergency calls, um, or just be on emergency scenes, then find what you're good at for the department because you can always help out your community no matter what. Right. But yeah, that's what I would think.
I was gonna say something and it just,
That's okay.
Well, I also think if, let's say, some fire departments have a board, sometimes the boards make all decisions and they're not even firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the boards should be firefighters to make a decision.
Oh,
over
to have a board. Yeah,
board
yeah.
commission.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to make decisions for the fire department, you should either have rode a truck
Yep.
or can still be able to.
I think that goes as far as the city council as well too. Like I won't say that they need to be one, but they need to have
Understanding.
an understanding what actually goes on and what it takes to run this service.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people see the price of, I mean, that's an expensive fire engine, or that's an expensive class to send to somebody, or that's an expensive tool that we need to buy. If they had better education and a better understanding of why those tools and why we need the truck, I think they'd be more willing to
Yeah, 100%.
give us the money. Well, not really give us the money, but
Give us the
supply us that equipment
Yeah.
and supply us that training.
You throw it into your city council has no idea the calls that you're on.
No,
I mean, I'm not just speaking about ours, but
I would.
if you take most cities, counties, whatever, if you take any of your council members, whatever board you have, and you take any single one of them and you put them on a truck with you for a day, they're going to freak out
Oh, obviously.
because between structure fires or
medical calls,
Medicals.
car wrecks,
you take them on a car wreck that's got entrapment and the
there's a lot.
trauma that they see of, somebody's mangled body, or you take them on a medical call and they get to see the 400-pound, glue lift assist that's never wearing pants.
Smelled bad.
Yeah,
Smells like they-
you walk into a house, your board members are
it's almost-
living, kind of high up. They have the nice
Lavishly.
house, and
Yeah,
they walk into a house that smells like cat piss.
yeah.
That's not something that they're going to want to do because, they're not used to it.
But I also think too that falls back onto who your officer is or the person that's running your department. Is he doing a good job explaining why we need these things, explaining why we need more money, explaining why we have more, why we need, better equipment, better qualification, better training, whatever? Is he doing a good job? So I think that goes back to goes to your chief or whatever rank it is he doing a good job explain why we need these things, right? Because sometimes I mean, you don't want to, sometimes you don't want to piss people off. Sometimes as bad as we hate to say it, sometimes like politics are necessary, especially for equipment that we need and stuff. As bad as we hate to say it, and sometimes you really have to, when it comes to talking with those people in power, or talking to the politicians or why we need these things, is your chief or who's ever over your department, are they good at explaining and telling them why?
Whenever those politicians can, do you dirty, put in a word here and a word there, and you're gone in a heartbeat. It would be scary.
People in
It'd
that
be
county
scary.
have been done that exact way.
It would be
Mhm.
scary to raise a voice. As
Yeah.
much as you might want to, you got to feed a family.
Yep, you do.
I mean, you got to go home and put food on the table and clothes on the back. It's scary to raise your voice sometimes. Absolutely.
It is. It is.
I'll tell you this, most of the politicians or whatever, they don't want to get their hands dirty. They
No.
have their job to do. They like their job. They can sit in the office. They tell people what to do, whatever. I'll tell you this, and I'm not going to name them, but one of the representatives for the state was out here on his hands and knees working in mud, grease, oil, everything in a nice dress shirt, suit tie, khaki pants, all that.
Mhm.
he just got done with a meeting. He came downstairs from the meeting, and I was out in the bay working on a couple of generators. And he gets on his hands and knees and comes and helps me.
Yeah.
And it's people like that
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 really
you
make a
want to
difference.
see in those positions because
Yeah.
number one, they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, but they're also in a position that, if they come and they know what it's like to get their hands dirty, then they know what kind of position that you could be in.
Yeah.
And, this equipment breaks, that equipment's expensive.
Yeah.
Routine maintenance on stuff, budgeting and all that.
And I think
People that are willing to get their hands dirty over
Mm.
that are still in the political positions, that's the people that not necessarily that we need, because I mean, still, you need somebody, that's good at marketing or budgeting and whatnot.
yeah,
But
or good at raising
somebody that
raising money as well too.
somebody that knows the expense of working,
Yeah.
that's who you need in.
And I think our chief, he does a pretty good job of getting his hands dirty and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There's been plenty of times if we have called him and say, "Hey, we had a sewer line break," and that actually did happen, and there's shit water all over
That is
there
true
and stuff
story.
like that. And he came, he showed up, and he helped us. He helped us clean up.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of times that if a structure fire came out, he's going with us. It doesn't really matter what time it's come out, and he's done a pretty good job doing that. So, I agree.
I've been
I think,
interior with him
yeah.
multiple times
Yeah.
since he's gotten chief.
He would definitely come help out.
Yep.
Just don't let him draft. He tends to mess up
My-
sometimes. Other than that, he's awesome. Just don't let him draft sometimes.
If you ever watch this, just remember you're doing a good job.
You're doing a great job. Just don't draft.
Except at draft.
Except for drafting.
Just don't touch it.
I mean,
don't-
to be completely honest
Stay
with
away
you, I'm
from a
pretty
pump
sure
handle.
he's sitting in the living room right now.
Oh, is he?
So he can probably hear everything.
He's great.
But
He's a great guy.
You hear that, Cody? Stay away from pump handles.
Engine
No, he can
even 77 to be exact.
He can even get us water. Just don't try to pull it.
Yeah. But yeah,
stay away from the primer.
yeah. But
That's
yeah,
it.
like I said, I think
Especially the brown.
we pretty much covered everything we're going to talk about for tonight and stuff like that. It's really good. More of the episode and stuff. Thanks for coming, Kezzy. It's been great.
We'll be coming out with the YouTube.
Yeah,
the day by
be
day
watching
YouTube.
the YouTube because here in the next couple weeks, we're going to start filming. I guess the first part we're doing I've announced this on the Instagram page, my personal Facebook, and on a YouTube short that we are doing a first responder
Kind of day by
documentary.
day.
And it's day by day. Basically, start recording from. He's a pretty new firefighter. We're starting what it takes to be a firefighter, what it looks like in the day of our lives and stuff.
That's going to be from the time I wake
I
up.
think we're gonna have to cut a lot of stuff out.
That's okay. We won't.
We are going to film an absolute burner.
Well, yeah,
But anyway,
it's going to be from the time that we wake up in the morning and get out of our beds to the time that, we get off shift, cuts here and there, but it's going to
Mhm.
show you from our at-home life going straight to our work life.
Yeah.
How that mindset set switches, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just be sure to tune in to the YouTube channel, which is the Daily Burner and stuff. Subscribe to it, like, comment. If you guys have anything that you want to add to the channel or add to the podcast, just let us know in the comments and stuff. Like I said, this is the Daily Burner, and we'll catch you next week.